This oil rig looking thing is actually a floating pontoon. And these pontoons are arguably the most popular way to go out and see the Great Barrier Reef. What is a pontoon, you might ask? To my understanding, a pontoon is a big floaty thing anchored to the ocean floor. Scattered throughout the Great Barrier Reef, there are over 30 of these pontoons that offer tours. And from what I've seen, they all offer pretty similar tour experiences in general. In this video, I'll be giving my review of my experience on one of these pontoons out here in Cairns. At the end of the video, I'll give an honest rating of what I thought the experience was like and whether or not it was worth it on a scale of 1 to 10. A ticket for a day trip to the pontoon costs around 300 Australian, and I found that this is pretty typical, not just with the one that we used, but just around the board with all the different pontoons. They typically tend towards that kind of 300 number. For us, we actually got half off because my friend works at a hotel and he got a discount for the tour. But yeah, if you're going in with no discounts, expect to pay around 300 Australian dollars. With a day trip ticket, of course, you're gonna get access to the pontoon, and typically I think you get around 3 hours on the pontoon before the return boat back to shore takes you home. You'll also get a set of rental snorkel gear to go out and actually explore the reef once you're on the pontoon. And additionally, all the tours that I've seen have either a glass bottom boat or one of those semi-submersibles to go out and do a little loop around the reef and view them from an observation window, basically. Most of these pontoons will also offer some additional things that you could purchase for extra. I've seen helicopter tours that leave from the pontoon. This weird helmet thing that looks like something from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And then also, of course, there's going to be scuba stuff that you could rent or go on a guided tour as well. So what was this experience actually like though? So the first thing I need to talk about is the boat ride out to the pontoon, and it's going to be a long one. It's supposed to take, I think, around 2 hours. Our trip took 3 hours to get all the way out to the pontoon. Part of the reason why is Great Adventures, the tour that we took, stops at Green Island on the way. So we had to wait for more people to load onto the boat before going to the pontoon. But the biggest reason it took so long, besides the distance itself, is weather conditions. So when we were leaving Cairns from the reef terminal in the morning, the weather was actually pretty nice and it didn't seem like it was gonna be that bad. But as soon as we got out of kind of the, I guess, sort of harbor mouth of Cairns, the weather got really bad really quick. A big downside with taking one of these pontoon tours as well is going to be that because they're so popular, a lot of the times you will need to book in advance, and you're kind of locked in if the weather is bad on the day that you book for the trip. As far as boats that you could take out to the reef, the catamarans they use for these tours are honestly probably one of the better options that you could have. I remember I went out on like a 4-meter tinny my first time out on the reef, and weather conditions were a lot better than they were on this day, and I still felt almost as seasick going out on that as I did going out on the big catamaran. Though, to be honest, I did get more seasick going on the big catamaran just because conditions were that much worse. Once we did make it out to the pontoon, it was a pretty huge relief because the pontoon is a lot more stable than being on the boat rocking back and forth. So if you do get seasick easily, one big consolation or one big perk of being on the pontoons is that you will have that stability once you're actually out on the reef. And I'm not gonna lie, being on the pontoon was pretty cool. It really does feel kind of like you have your own sort of manufactured island resort, but it's just out in the middle of the ocean on the reef. And to be honest, it's pretty crazy how much it does feel like a resort. They have lifeguards. The whole area around the pontoon itself is kind of netted, I think, to keep jellyfish or just maybe keep snorkelers in. I don't know exactly what the net is for. They have an upper deck as well, which to the best way I could describe, it's basically like a tanning deck. They got the little lawn chairs out there and stuff. And one of the biggest selling points that they always advertise for these pontoons on websites is usually they'll have this observation deck window. And it is pretty cool. It does feel kind of like you're going to an aquarium or something. But yeah, it's cool for about 10 or 15 seconds and then you're kind of like, eh, and you move on from it. So there's also the semi-submersible or the glass bottom boats that they typically have. We actually didn't try this out, but I have been in one of these before, and from my experience, they're kind of cool, but really not that special. It's one of those things where you get in and you could be in there for 45 minutes, but probably after 15 to 20 minutes, you're kind of over it. Now, of course, the most important part of going out on the pontoon, at least to me, is the snorkeling aspect of it. And they do give you a full set of snorkeling gear, as I mentioned before. They offer these things called lycra suits if you're worried about brushing up against anything on the reef, which I found we looked pretty funny wearing them. I felt like a Teletubby going out there. Even with the bad weather, snorkeling out by the pontoon was by far the best part of the entire experience. Over anything else, any other features on the pontoon, the snorkeling was by far what I would go there to do again. If you've never been snorkeling or just like out in the water on a tropical reef before, it is pretty mind-blowing. It really does feel like a different planet, and in my opinion, it is one of those things that you kind of just have to try and see how it is. And I will say one big positive about being out on the pontoon is you really do have a sense of security when you're going out and snorkeling out there. When I went for the first time on the reef with me and my local mate, and it was just me out in the water, it was kind of terrifying because you're 20 kilometers off the coast and there's literally, when we were out, there was no boats around us and it's ocean as far as you can see. So if it's your first time out on the reef, I think definitely being surrounded by other people and having the nets and the lifeguard, that's all kind of a nice touch. After about an hour and a half of snorkeling, we had to get out and go back to shore as our time was up. And a lot of our time was eaten up just by getting out there in the bad weather conditions that we had. And overall, I'm not mad. I thought it was a pretty good experience. So, was the experience worth the money, and what do I actually rate this whole experience being on the pontoon? For 300 bucks, I feel very neutral, but I'm leaning towards a little bit not worth. Just knowing that there are different ways to see the reef. You can go to the coral cays all around the reef, or you could go out on a day trip on a boat, and I believe there's some cheaper options there as well. 300 is a little bit steep for the experience we got, and it's steep for the amount of time that you actually get to go snorkeling and exploring the reef. So I'd say, honestly, probably not worth 300. Now, the most exciting part, what do I actually rate this? I would say it's really not, at least going to the pontoon specifically, is not really something that I would go out of my way towards. So I'd give it somewhere around like a 6.7 out of 10. But I do feel like I need to rate the snorkeling just out on the reef in general separately. And for snorkeling out on the reef, I would give that a solid 8 out of 10. That is something that I would actually get on a short plane flight and make a small trip out of, just to go see the reef and snorkel in the reef, because it is really pretty crazy to be out there, especially if you've never been out in any sort of tropical reef before. Anyways though, that's the video, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.